Okay, so when I say the name Marie Curie, you probably think of a few things, right? Labs, Nobel Prizes, just this absolute scientific legend. But there's this whole other side to her story, a chapter that most people have never heard of. And it doesn't take place in some pristine lab. No, it's set on the muddy, chaotic front lines of World War I.
Seriously, take a second. When you hear Marie Curie, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's going to be one of a few, really iconic things.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it's something like this. You're thinking about radium, right? Or her Nobel Prizes, and not just one, but two of them in two completely different fields of science. I mean, that's just an absolutely staggering achievement. She's a titan of science, no question about it.
But what if I told you that wasn't the whole story? That during one of the darkest times in history, she actually put all that research on hold to become something totally different. A wartime hero, an innovator on the front lines whose work would go on to save an unbelievable number of lives.
So, to really get this hidden part of her story, we have to rewind. Let's go back to the start of World War I, because this war, it created a medical crisis on a scale that's just hard to even imagine. Okay, try to picture this. You're a surgeon on the battlefield. Soldiers are being dragged in from the trenches, just covered in mud and blood, with these horrific injuries from bullets and shrapnel. And you're working completely blind. You have no way of knowing where those pieces of metal are inside their bodies, so you're forced to guess. And those guesses, they led to horrible infections, way too many amputations, and, tragically, a lot of deaths.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't they have X-rays back then? And yeah, they did. But the technology was totally useless for the battlefield. We're talking about these massive, super delicate machines. They were stuck in city hospitals, miles and miles away from the fighting, and they needed a stable power source to even turn on. The front lines? They needed the exact opposite, something mobile, something tough, something that could power itself.
And this is where Marie Curie comes in. Her genius just shines through, but in a totally different way than you'd expect. She looked at this deadly problem and came up with a brilliant, practical solution. A solution that would soon get a very special name, the Petites Curies.
The Petites Curies. It means little Curies. And that was the affectionate nickname the French soldiers gave to these amazing little inventions. What were they? They were the world's first mobile X-ray units, and they were invented, built, and deployed by Marie Curie.
And listen, this wasn't just some abstract scientific idea. This was a masterclass in logistics and engineering. First off, she had to get the resources, so she goes out and convinces car companies to donate vehicles and hits up her wealthy friends for funding. Then you've got the power problem, which was a huge one. She solved it by hooking up a dynamo to the car's engine, basically turning the car into its own generator. Genius! And finally, she kitted out each van with everything they'd need, the X-ray machine, a little darkroom to develop the film right there, and even blackout curtains.
But here's the thing. Inventing the little Curies was really only half the story. Marie Curie didn't just design these things and then, hand off the keys to someone else. No way. She led the charge herself, personally, right there on the front lines.
She basically took over the entire Red Cross radiology service. She knew, deep down, that for this whole thing to actually work, she had to be directly involved, hands-on, even if it meant putting her own life on the line.
And just stop and think about what that actually meant for a second. We're talking about a Nobel Prize-winning scientist who taught herself how to drive and fix cars, which, by the way, very few women at the time knew how to do. She buried herself in anatomy books so she could be more helpful and train people properly. And get this, she created a brand new wartime job for women, training over 150 of them, including her own daughter, Irene, to be radiographers. And maybe the most incredible part? She personally drove these vans to the front lines over and over, operating them while under enemy fire.
So what was the payoff for all this incredible work? Well, the numbers, they're just staggering. But they also tell a story of a huge personal sacrifice.
All right, so by the time the war ended, she had personally gotten 20 Petites Curies built and out on the field. 20 of them. A small fleet, sure, but a powerful one that was literally saving lives.
And she didn't just stop with the mobile vans. Not at all. She also helped set up 200 permanent X-ray posts in the field hospitals. She was building this whole radiological network, right where it was needed the most.
And all of that, it leads to the biggest number of all, the one that really matters. In total, it's estimated that her technology was used to examine more than 1 million wounded soldiers. Think about that.
Over 1 million men who now had a fighting chance because surgeons could finally see what they were doing. But, as you can imagine, this kind of selfless work, it came at a huge personal cost for Marie Curie.
And here's the tragic irony in all of this. The very radiation that she harnessed to save all those lives, it was also silently killing her. She was working without any of the protective gear we know is absolutely essential today. All that prolonged, unprotected exposure, it almost certainly caused the radiation-related illness that eventually took her life. The very science she used to save so many others ended up shortening her own.
So the next time you hear the name Marie Curie, yeah, of course, think about the Nobel Prizes, think about radium, but maybe also remember the Petites Curies. Remember the battlefields of France, and remember the more than 1 million soldiers whose lives she touched. It really just leaves you with this one big question, right? How does one person's vision in the middle of a crisis totally redefine what's even possible?